She is crying uncontrollably, her heartbreaking sobs filled with deep sorrow. You might wonder, what kind of devastating event has she gone through? This girl is from Zhejiang, and she had been in a relationship with her boyfriend for 8 years. Throughout their time together, they experienced many highs and lows. They had planned to get married during this year's National Day holiday. However, things didn't go as smoothly as expected. The girl's parents set a condition. They demanded the boy's family buy a house in the city and pay a bride price of 480,000 yuan, while the boy's parents were willing to buy a house, since, according to local traditions, marriage requires owning a home. The high bride price put them in a difficult position. They simply couldn't afford that much money. Hoping to negotiate, the boy's parents approached the girl's family, requesting a lower bride price. However, the girl's parents refused to compromise, insisting that 480,000 yuan was the minimum and that it was a fair market price, not an arbitrary demand. This led to a deadlock between the two families. Desperate to save his relationship, the boy borrowed money from various sources and managed to gather 380,000 yuan. But when he presented the amount to the girl's parents, they rejected it outright, stating that not a single penny less would be accepted. They claimed it was not just about the money. It was about showing the right attitude. But was it really about attitude? In reality, this demand pushed the boy's family into unbearable distress. In the end, realizing that further compromises were useless, the boy painfully decided to end the relationship. After the breakup, his parents quickly arranged a meeting with another potential bride, and soon he found someone who agreed to marry him. The wedding was scheduled for the end of the year. Upon hearing this news, the girl was devastated. She went out drinking alone, and as she kept thinking about everything that had happened, her emotions spiraled out of control. This led to the scene in the video, her lying on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. No matter how much people around her tried to comfort her, nothing worked. A passerby recorded the heartbreaking moment. According to a close friend, the girl never had a say in her own family. She had no authority, especially in front of her parents, making it impossible for her to stand up for her boyfriend. The situation became even more tragic when it was revealed that she had a younger brother. Suddenly, everything made sense. Her parents' true intention was to use their daughter's marriage to secure a hefty bride price to fund their son's future wedding expenses. Being born into such a family is truly heartbreaking. To her parents, she was nothing more than a bargaining tool, a means to an end. They didn't care about her happiness. Their only priority was ensuring a secure future for their son, maximizing their daughter's value in the process. They believed that by demanding a high bride price, they were securing their son's future, hoping that in their old age, he would appreciate their sacrifices and take care of them. The shift in marriage perspectives. Recently, I have noticed that young men in China are becoming more practical and rational about marriage. Back in August, a young woman approached me to join a matchmaking service. She had previously been married but had no children. She was 165 centimeters tall, slightly above average in looks, and worked as a sales representative in a private company, earning around 10,000 yuan per month. Her family background was decent. She lived near Shuo, and her parents were retired. She had a younger brother who was married and starting a business. While she owned a car, she had neither a house nor savings. When she joined the service, she made it clear that she wanted to find a man with better financial stability. She didn't care much about age or appearance. Based on her preferences, I introduced her to a man with solid financial conditions. He, too, had been briefly married but had no children. He worked as a senior executive at a state-owned enterprise, earning an annual salary of around 200,000 yuan. He was 177 centimeters tall, kept himself in good shape, and was born in 1988. While he wasn't a local, he owned a house, a car, and had significant savings. After meeting, the woman was immediately attracted to him, and within 2 months, they began dating. They met each other's parents, and their relationship progressed smoothly. They even started discussing wedding plans, house renovations, and the bride price. When it came to renovations, the man let the woman make all the decisions. Everything went smoothly until they discussed the bride price. The woman asked how much savings he had and requested that he give half of it as a bride price. She also insisted that this money should remain with her family to support her parents in their retirement. The man disagreed, reasoning that marriage, house renovations, and raising children would all require substantial financial resources. He offered to give 100,000 yuan as a bride price, stating that he would also support her parents if they ever face health issues. However, the woman was dissatisfied. She argued that 100,000 yuan was too little, saying that the minimum standard should be at least 168,000 or 188,000 yuan. Rather than arguing, the man simply said he needed time to reconsider. To my surprise, the next day, he called me and said, "I don't think this woman and I are a good match." It was clear to everyone why he made this decision. He asked me to inform the woman and then completely cut off all contact by blocking her. Unexpectedly, the woman accepted the breakup without hesitation. She didn't try to negotiate or delay the inevitable. Do you think this man acted too quickly? A personal story. Recently, I experienced something that deeply upset me. I never imagined that after 5 years of being together, my boyfriend and I would be on the verge of breaking up, just because of the bride price. We always had a strong relationship, and lately, we started seriously discussing marriage. Yesterday, his parents formally visited my parents for the first time. It should have been a great start, but things took a complicated turn. That meeting was rather hurried. After both families had dinner together, his parents left in a rush. Throughout the entire gathering, they scarcely mentioned anything about the house or the engagement celebration, and the overall atmosphere felt somewhat distant. Our family didn't have excessive expectations regarding the dowry. We merely hoped for a token amount of several tens of thousands of yuan. My parents were incredibly generous, even stating that after the wedding, I could take the dowry back with me, and they would fully finance a car as a wedding present. I assumed everything would go smoothly, but unexpectedly, his family declined outright. They firmly stated that offering a dowry was an outdated custom, and even claimed that accepting one was now illegal, equating it to selling a daughter. They proposed purchasing the house, but insisted that the property deed should bear only my boyfriend's name. As for renovation expenses, they suggested that my family should cover them, while the mortgage would be a shared responsibility between me and my boyfriend. What left me utterly speechless was their blunt statement that no dowry would be provided, because all their financial resources would be allocated to purchasing the house, leaving no extra funds. Reluctantly, they agreed to give 10,000 yuan for a gold necklace, a gold ring, and a gold bracelet, arguing that it was necessary for appearances. These words infuriated me. I immediately felt that if we couldn't reach a consensus on such an important matter, ending the relationship might be the only viable option. To be honest, I believe his family is overly calculating and lacks genuine sincerity. During our courtship, none of these issues were apparent, but now that marriage was on the table, their true nature was emerging. Since this incident, my boyfriend and I have been giving each other the cold shoulder. Lately, I have been deeply troubled by this dowry issue, and it has even disrupted my sleep. A few days later, my boyfriend reached out again, offering some compromises. His family was now willing to provide 38,000 yuan as a dowry and separately allocate 20,000 yuan for the gold jewelry. They also agreed to include my name on the property deed, but on the condition that my family contribute 200,000 yuan towards a car and another 200,000 yuan towards home renovations as initial funds for our new household. Honestly, I fail to comprehend why his family remains so meticulous about financial contributions while still insisting on marriage. If they feel that the financial burden is overwhelming, they could simply postpone the wedding until their circumstances improve. Why make things so contentious? I now feel particularly disheartened, as if these 5 years of emotions have been wasted. However, at the same time, I am reluctant to let go of the relationship, given the strong emotional foundation we have built over the years. What confuses me most is how my boyfriend, who is always considerate, placing me at the center of his world, has suddenly become so frugal. Now, all I can do is sigh, realizing that no one else can truly grasp my feelings. That being said, I still consider my parents' opinions crucial, as they have more experience and can see things more clearly. I am seriously questioning whether he is truly worth marrying. I used to struggle to understand why people criticize the dowry system. In my opinion, if a family is financially stable, the party providing the dowry wouldn't see it as a burden, and the receiving party would accept it without issue. I assumed that many of those who oppose dowries came from lower-income backgrounds, making their arguments seem less convincing to me. I believe that for women from modest backgrounds, marriage carried great responsibility, particularly during childbirth, which involves significant risks. If both families have average financial conditions and their incomes are modest, and if the man's character cannot be fully guaranteed, I find it completely reasonable for the woman to receive a dowry as a safeguard during childbirth and as an emergency fund for the family. In the event of complications, if the husband's family cannot provide financial support, the dowry could serve as a security net for the mother and child. This seems entirely justifiable. After all, a woman endures immense physical, emotional, and temporal sacrifices during childbirth. Asking the man to contribute financially as a balance seems like a fair arrangement. However, I later realized that my previous perspective was somewhat naive. Many women, after receiving the dowry, do not keep it for their own future security, but instead hand it over to their families. What shocked me even more was that their families often use this money to help their brothers secure wives, rather than for the parents themselves. In such cases, the dowry may seem to be given to the woman, but in reality, it is redirected to her family, specifically to her brothers. Under these circumstances, once a woman marries, her husband's family may feel entitled to expect her to bear children, manage household chores, and even provide unpaid labor, believing that since they paid a high dowry, she should fully dedicate herself to their household. Meanwhile, her own family may also expect her to financially support them, reasoning that since they raise her, it is only natural for her to give back. As a result, the woman finds herself trapped between two sides, struggling to meet both sets of expectations. Life for such a woman is truly burdensome. Recently, I have noticed that the issue of dowries has become increasingly complex, with many regions even implementing regulations to control or prohibit the practice. In some places, accepting a dowry is no longer permitted. Many women who initially intended to use the dowry as a future safety net now no longer have that option. These evolving policies and social changes have made me reflect deeply. What is the way forward for us as women? Relying solely on marriage is evidently unreliable. Traditional beliefs suggest that as long as a woman marries into a good family, she can depend on her husband's family for housing, a car, and financial stability. But in reality, neither the husband's family nor the woman's own family can be fully relied upon. It seems that once a woman reaches adulthood, she truly has nothing to depend on but herself. For men, society does not demand independence in the same way. It is common for them to rely on their parents to purchase a house, a car, and even pay for a dowry. However, if a woman relies on her parents for something as trivial as a piece of fruit, she may be criticized. This societal standard feels incredibly unfair. As women, when we fight for our rights, we must never sacrifice our independence. The only way to maintain autonomy is through work. While employment may be exhausting and sometimes fraught with inequality, at least it offers tangible rewards. Conversely, in the realm of family life, many contributions go unrecognized and are taken for granted. From my perspective, the distinction between participating in the workforce and being a homemaker lies in compensation. One is paid, while the other is not. No matter how much effort a woman puts into domestic life, people will always find reasons to claim she isn't doing enough. However, in the workplace, regardless of how tiring the job is, at least there is financial compensation in return. At the very least, there are established rules and guidelines to depend on in the workplace, and if dissatisfaction arises, switching jobs is an option. However, in marriage, there are often no alternatives but to endure in silence. That is why I want to emphasize to all the women out there that a dowry and matrimony are not assurances of our well-being. More often than not, they become the root of distress. When we have yet to achieve full self-sufficiency, the wisest decision is to continuously enhance our skills and strengthen our negotiating position so that when we eventually step into marriage, we do so with confidence. Engaging in disputes with individuals who squabble over the dowry issue is futile, as they are merely expressing their frustration over their own inadequacy. These men, once they enter matrimony, lead women toward a single fate. They shirk responsibility, refuse to contribute, are unwilling to provide financially, yet still expect a wife, all while avoiding any familial duties or commitments. Marrying such a man is truly a frightening prospect. If they are reluctant to offer a dowry, then sisters, we need not concern ourselves with such irresponsible individuals. The only viable path forward is to persevere through hard work and secure our own financial stability and protection. Let us collectively strive to phase out these unreliable men. Why has a dispute over bride prices in China persisted for so long? At its core, the controversy essentially boils down to two fundamental questions. First, why should the groom's family be obligated to pay a dowry? This is tied to the underlying purpose of the practice. Second, how should the dowry be assessed? Does it mean that the groom must comply with whatever amount the bride's family requests? One of the primary challenges surrounding the dowry debate is whether it serves as a means for the bride's parents to recover the expenses incurred in raising their daughter. In some rural regions, daughters are still regarded as a workforce within the household, and their marriage is perceived as a transfer of labor. As a result, parents expect the dowry to act as reimbursement for the years of nurturing their daughter. Often, this money is redirected towards securing a marriage or housing for the bride's younger or elder brother. For single-child families in urban areas, if a bride asserts that her parents endured hardships raising her, the groom could counter by saying that his parents faced similar struggles. This creates an impasse, making the dowry issue a significant point of contention. A second justification for the dowry is that it serves as compensation for the bride due to the effects of childbirth, particularly the setback it causes in her professional growth. This perspective prioritizes the bride's interests, as the first 3 years of marriage frequently witness high divorce rates. During this phase, women bear the child-rearing burden alone, so the dowry can be perceived as a form of risk mitigation. However, for couples in dual-income no-kids DINK, households who opt not to have children, the significance of a dowry diminishes, as there is no child-rearing obligation to offset. A third, more widely accepted purpose of the dowry, particularly among younger urban couples, is to use it as seed capital for their new household. Nevertheless, from a legal standpoint, the dowry belongs to the bride as her premarital asset. Regardless of the sum, the groom typically expects the bride to reciprocate with a dowry of her own. If the bride merely accepts the dowry without offering a return gift and further demands additional funds under the guise of parental compensation, the groom may feel as though he is at a loss, perceiving the transaction as an outright sale of the bride. Thus, the crux of the dowry controversy lies in achieving a fair balance between the dowry and reciprocal gifts. The amount should not be exorbitant. If it is intended as compensation for the bride's parents, it should reflect the average cost of raising a daughter in that region, possibly with a slight premium. In some instances, the bride's family may even request the groom to contribute toward her brother's future dowry, further complicating the matter. If the dowry is meant to account for the financial impact of childbirth, the amount should factor in income loss and career stagnation during maternity. However, irrespective of its intended purpose, the sum should not be dictated solely by the bride's family's demands. The dowry is a form of compensation, so the amount should be maintained within a reasonable minimum threshold. Another related concern is how the dowry's value should be determined. Presently, there is no standardized calculation, which fuels the ongoing debate. The reason dowry discussions remain contentious ultimately stems from their monetary nature and the absence of a widely accepted formula. If the dowry sum is arbitrarily set by the bride's family based on tradition or upbringing costs, with no regard for the groom's family's willingness or financial capability, the arrangement is unlikely to foster happiness. If emotional leverage is used as a bargaining tool, the groom may acquiesce begrudgingly but will likely harbor resentment in the long run. Furthermore, if the dowry surpasses what the groom can realistically afford, no amount of reasoning can justify it, and the outcome is bound to be unsatisfactory. If you were to marry a Chinese woman, how much dowry would you be willing to pay? Feel free to share your thoughts.